a sip of coffee now. We're going to restart.
Mercury retrograde, 1 point.
It normally doesn't get me. Normally it doesn't affect me, but there you go.
Well, there's a first time for all of it, isn't there?
Well, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're back. We're back in the saddle. We're going to do this. We're going to pick up from where we left off. Thank you guys so much for being patient. And Peter, I'm going to give you the floor back.
Well, thank you, Stormy, and for your patience and your perseverance too with technical difficulties on a Mercury retrograde. Okay, so we were talking about how one hand shows the inner world and one hand shows the outer world. It's a bit like when you look at a horoscope, and the upper hemisphere is more outward orientated and below the horizon is more inner orientated. And so one hand is sort of in a way reflective of the moon and one of the sun. And I guess most astrologers are familiar with the luminaries, the sun and the moon and what they represent. And this is the way that people normally present their hands, left and right. So a question. Now, this is a question. Now, because you're the main, or we can ask the audience too, of course, Stormy, but which planet would you say, throwing it back on you here, which planet would you say rules beauty, art, presentation, fashion? Your voice is gone.
Probably Venus.
Hey, you're right, first time. Congratulations. So that was the correct answer, Venus. How's that? I'm getting to a point here. This is for astrologers who want to know about palmistry and about hand reading. And so which planet rules vitality and life-giving energy and one's own self-identity and all these things?
Oh, the sun.
You're right again. You've been very, very well trained, I can tell. Yes, so I'm asking these questions for a reason, and the reason is that on nearly all the palmistry books you'll ever read, they'll say that the Venus finger, that's this one here, the ring finger, I don't know, I think it's the same in the US, you wear a ring on your ring finger to show relationship status. They will say it's the sun finger, the sun. But the reason that came about is because it was named initially after the Apollo god of the god of the sun, Apollo, god of the arts. But after a few centuries, it got watered down, so all that we're left with was the sun, and so people think it's the sun finger. But this is the finger that represents beauty and art and presentation and intuition as well. Actually, yes. So, and they say that the area beneath this area here, which is surrounded by the lifeline, they call it the Mount of Venus, which is a bit of an irreverent sort of reference to other things, the sexual power and so forth, but it's actually not true. It's the Mount of the sun itself, of vitality, enthusiasm, motivation, and the lifeline which encircles that, which we'll talk about in just a second, shows how much of that you've got and how much you can use, you see. Yeah, so this is the solar mount. I'm saying there's the lifeline, you see. It's drawn very simply and very boldly here. Normally it doesn't look as strong as that, but I wanted to show you where it is. Most people got little lines coming off and on and going across it and so forth. I understand, because you're looking at your hands, you're saying, well, what about mine? And it's the same for everybody. We've got little bits down there and so forth. Yeah. So just going on a little bit. So there we have on the base of the hands, the two lights which are basic to all of life and which everybody in astrology is familiar with. We look at where your sun is and where your moon is. And next thing we go to the ascendant and so forth. But where the lights are in the hand is at the base of the palm, the very foundation and the fabric of our life. Yeah. And all the other energies that goes up the hands, and basically it does, shows the other planets and movements towards that. I'll come up to that in a second. So the sun and the moon, we've spoken about that. I won't dwell upon it here. And of course, we've got the inner and the outer world, the basic energies, the yin and the yang, and that's on both hands reflected. Okay, we're getting back to astrology here. A lot of astrologers are, particularly more nowadays, becoming familiar with the so-called Chaldean order of the planets.
Yeah.
These are the classical visible planets in order of their speed. And we start with Saturn, go to Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, which is the fastest. So Saturn's the slowest there. Yeah. And we find this on the hands as well. Of course, this is the days of the week. It's used in many, many different ways. And also for the houses of the chart and so forth, with Saturn showing the ensoulment in the first house and the exit of the soul in the eighth house and so forth. But here on the hands, we see the same Chaldean order, very neatly laid out. Basically, the outer planets, including the sun, are on the outer side of the hand. The thumb is always the outer side. The hands itself, the inner world and the outer world. So we have two different sides, and they show how the two different energies come together. So the inner side of the hand is the inner planets show on the inner side of the hands. And if we start with Saturn and go through to Jupiter and then to Mars and the sun, we've got the same order as shown at the top of the diagram. Yeah, they're the outer planets, although the sun is not really an outer planet, it sits in the middle. And so we continue to the inner planets and around through Mercury to the moon. And there's our sequence laid on the hands as it is in classical astrology. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I find it interesting. Yes. So, and of course, we go back and start again at Saturn. Now, I've used just one hand here, but it's the same for both hands. This is just shown here for convenience. Yeah, it's convenient to look at it this way. I hope you can understand my Australian accent.
I think we're loving it.
Oh, good, good. Okay, so they're the different, we look at all sorts of things about the hands for the shape of the hand. We look at the dimensions of the palm, whether the fingers are long or short compared to the palm, and so forth. That's a very vital thing. There's a lot there to consider. I'll move on fairly quickly. You did mention earlier at the start about fingerprints, Stormy, and of course the police and other law enforcement agencies use them for identification. But even though that's the case, there are only 4 basic types of fingerprints, and we can use those. They have a strong correlation to certain sides of astrology, which is the modes like fixed energy and so forth. But here today, I'll talk perhaps a little bit more about the zones of the hands, because this is where the planets, the planetary energies are embedded in the hands. Yeah, we've already looked at the very base of the hand. We've got the sun and the moon, and Mars really sits at the top of the sun and the last portion of the thumb. It's how we act and how we do things, and the thumb shows how we act and direct our life in many ways. Yeah.
Mm.
And the power source and the energy is the sun at the base, just like in our solar system. It's the energy and it's the power source. Jupiter, Saturn, and we've got the inner planets, Mercury and Venus up there. Yeah, so they're lines linking these areas on the hands. So
Wow.
it's just like aspects in our chart. That's right, exactly. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
I feel like I'm going to run around with my Mars thumbs now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. So these are the lines, by the way, the major lines. We've got the lifeline, what they call the fate line. I call it the Saturn line. It's really all about Saturn. And Saturn is sort of how we get life together in a way, isn't it? How we pull it all and structure it all and show it's represented by the line running up the center of the hand. Most people don't have such a clear, straight Saturn line or fate line. It's more fragmented. But here, well, okay. This is done for diagrammatic purposes. The other 2 major lines, aside from the lifeline, are the thinking line, that's the headline, and the line which is all about feelings and emotions. Yeah, they don't have an exact equivalence in astrology, but they do link together the different planets.
Okay.
Sometimes the headline there drops right down into the mount of the moon. So you can probably guess without knowing the technical reason what that means. That person thinks very emotionally,
Yeah.
thinks with vivid colors, imagination. Yeah. The
Hmm.
downside can be too much superstition and fear and anxiety. Yeah. Pluses and minuses. If the hand curves upwards, it shows somebody that likes to be in control. Yeah. These are the different things, and we can correlate this with the horoscope. Yeah. These are 4 levels of interpretation we use in hand analysis. There's the shape, which is the left-hand one, the genetic engravings, which are the fingerprints. They never change. Unless you burn or injure your hand, they'll never change. There are the zones of the palm which correlate with the planets, and the way that these planets interact is shown by the major lines of the hands. Yeah. I'll skip some of this information, but here in the middle, we've got a sort of the circular diagram is a bit reflective of the horoscope. I'll just move it forward a little bit because on that circular diagram, we have the four of the major angles of the chart. The thumb more or less represents or signifies in some way, reflects the energy of the ascendant. And the top of the palm, at the base of the middle finger there, is sort of has an equivalence with Saturn or the MC, as does the descendant with the below the little finger there with the descendant.
Okay.
And at the base of the hand, we have the IC, and that's a major, we call it a birth area. It shows the influences around us at birth and in the early years of our life. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It records prenatal influences. Yeah.
Well, I'm
So
studying it.
it's a bit, what's that, Stormy?
I'm studying it right now.
Yes, of course. It's very similar to the IC in your chart, the cusp and the 4th house itself. Yeah. And if we move, I'll move through these because it gets quite technical. Well, just perhaps look at the zone of Saturn for a moment. The lines record things, by the way. They don't determine anything. They actually record things. So if you change your life, they'll start to record something different, which is why they change. Yeah. So the Saturn, the line which goes up to the Saturn zone is called the Saturn line. We've talked about it. It's otherwise called the fate line. We make our own fate. And it's where the Saturn line terminates, and it corresponds to this area, the Saturn zone, with the midheaven. It's the area of, in palmistry at least, it represents reality, material reality. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
people with a good Saturn line or fate line that keeps on going, they've got a sense of direction and they're able to get it together in a very real sense, which normally translates as money or career. Yeah.
Sure.
Or something which is tangible.
Not gonna lie, my Saturn line looks a bit shabby right now. I better have some other redeeming qualities.
Well, you need to look at both hands.
Okay.
Yeah? And on most people, 90% of hands, Stormy, we see it broken up into different segments, which reflect the different times of our life when we might shift from one. You might move from Colorado to Melbourne, Australia, or something. You see, and the Saturn line will show a correlation there. So major changes, if people's hands are very, very soft and slender and flexible, they're very into emotions and relationship sort of aspects of life. So major changes in the fate line, therefore, will show major shifts in relationships. And this is where the context of the hands is incredibly important, because they provide the way to interpret the lines. Yeah. And if we're combining this with astrology, it's actually fascinating to see how the hands correlate and what's really important.
Wow.
I think I can jump through all these hoops here. I just want a couple more little things, and you've probably got lots of questions. They're basically, we use as a way of providing a quick and ready package context, 4 different hand shapes. And they just simply combine, we've got long palms and short palms, short fingers and long fingers. Now, the way to think about the finger length, that's compared to the hand. Short fingers, long fingers. Have I got long fingers or short fingers, Stormy?
I don't know. They look like short fingers.
They are. I got it right again. Fantastic. So with short fingers, the fingers represent the mind, okay? So if you've got short fingers, the thoughts stay in the mind for a short time.
Okay.
So you think quickly and fast and get the big picture. Fast, you have to. If you've got long fingers, the thoughts stay in the mind for a longer time. So you think more slowly, more detailed, more thoroughly. Yeah. And then there's all permutations about this. So, but the fingers, the hand shapes where we combine square palms and long palms with short fingers and long fingers, giving us 4 different varieties. We correlate these with the 4 elements. This is where temperament comes in. We've had a number of people in recent years talk more about temperament in astrology. It's not done much in modern astrology, but so we've got, for example, the air-shaped hand has got a wider base and long fingers combined. Yeah, yeah. And the earth hand has got the wider base, but the short fingers. Very instinctive people, very earthy, straightforward. They'll pin you down if you're not being real, you know?
Yeah.
The fire hand has got the long palm and the short fingers. The long palm shows in-depth feelings and a lot of time spent inside. Then they come out really fast with it. Yeah, so they're quickly responsive. Yeah, with a strong emotional base to that, unless the hand is very rigid. And then we've got the water hands, which are long palm and long fingers and very flexible. And they'll spend a long time going through how they feel about things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're the 4, that's right, they're the 4 basic types. And there's variations on that, and it can get a bit detailed talking about it. So it's interesting looking at, for example, people's hands. Now, this is obviously Barack Obama, and he's got the philosophical hand shape. Recall this one, where we've got the long fingers a bit emphasized on the joints, and they're also fairly flexible except for his thumb. And so he's right into intellectual concepts and persuasion. He was the grand orator, of course. I'm not talking American politics here. Don't get me involved with that. But
Yeah, stay out of it. Just stay out of it.
Too dangerous. People even talk about it over here, would you believe? Yeah, so, but he was very, very, very persuasive and great skills in speaking, oratory, however you like him or not. And his thumb was a bit of a standout. It actually tapers off a bit. He was very intuitive and quick in certain ways. Yeah, long Venus fingers, so desire for acclaim and recognition. There's Venus again. Wants to be seen. Me, why. Yeah, but he knew how to do that with style, you see? So it's the finger of style. Yeah. Knotty fingers give him show analysis. And then we look at his chart to see how some of this is playing out. And really that takes us into too much detail than we've got here. In this particular case, I was talking about the Anticia opposition between Saturn, which is his really ruling planet, and the moon. It's not very clear there at all. It's at 3 degrees of Gemini, I think, from memory. Yeah, he's a great persuader. So other aspects in his chart add up to this capacity to talk and persuade. What's different about his hand, that's actually his right hand taken at a long distance photo, of course, but the way the thumb kicks in is unusual. It shows their capacity to grasp opportunities when they present themselves. So very interesting man, yes. And these are other people's hands. I'm comparing the chart here. So this person's got the joints, like there's this red circle. Can I use it? My cursor? There it is. That red around there. See the way the joints swell out at the sides? The joints and the fingers. That shows analysis. And it slows down the energy of the brain to get more detail, to analyze things thoroughly. This person has Mars in Virgo, for example. And this was a standout in their particular personality. And it's interesting to see how it is reflected. Here's somebody with short fingers, the fire-shaped hand.
Wow, this is fascinating. I feel like now I'm going to have to go pick up every palm book and see what's really going on over here. Check out my finger sense.
Yeah. So there's a lot in there, isn't there? The one on the right-hand side, these are prints, hand prints. I used to use ink.
Oh, okay.
Roll and then put the hands down on paper, do an outline of the hands while they're still on the ink and lift them off. And there we've got the result, because that shows a lot of in-depth detail that you don't ordinarily see. It's amazing how the print will show, for example, the influence of various drugs and so forth. Some people that used to, this is going back, I took these prints in the 1980s. I've got a stack of them. I don't do it anymore. It's too time consuming. I don't, yes. So, but that will show the influence of various different things. Like people used to take speed in those days. I don't know what people take nowadays. I've got a clue. But speedy, it showed on the hands as really speedy, zappy lines. The lines went all zappy and speedy. Yeah. The people that used to smoke too much dope used to be blotted line, areas of blot out on the hands, like they're blotted.
Wow.
Yeah. It does show. I've got no experience with the modern usage of intoxicants. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so I have a
Yeah.
question, because I know that you have like so much that you could be showing us, but we're just about at time. So if people wanted to, though, like spend some time with you or learn more with you about palms and astrology, can they do that? Do you offer that?
I do. I'm actually just having a pause at the moment. Certainly, I don't do readings anymore. Life's too busy. I run another business doing exhibitions. But I'll just run through all of this. I didn't talk about the different fingerprint types. There's a lot there to talk about as well, fixed energy and adaptable and so forth. And there's lots of things. That's the lifeline, linking together the different houses in the horoscope. Quite interesting. So just to get back to your question, if people actually want to contact me, there's the detail down there, down the bottom. The email address is the best, particularly if you're not in Australia. I was going to go to the, it's not there. There it is. It's my email address. Yeah.
Perfect.
And it's been fantastic talking to you, Stormy. And
Absolutely. And we're probably going to have you back again, because still people are so fascinated by this. And this is so much to take in. I feel like we need like a good, like another hour session to get into this.
We could do that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, good. Well, then we'll set up a time and I'll plan to have you back here. But you guys, I know it's another rabbit hole. They're like, look, this is another rabbit hole for me to go down. It's true. But you guys, I hope that you got to interact with something today that made you curious, that is definitely, gave you something that's worth the time you took to show up. And we're going to have Peter back. So I'll get him back on the schedule, because I think we've got to go a little bit more into this. Yeah, in the chat, they're saying, yes, have him back. So you're welcome back. That's brilliant. But thank you for coming over. Thank you for being patient with us today. That was a lot. We're doing a lot of learning today. So Peter, thanks for hanging in there.
Most welcome. Great to talk to you, Stormy.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, we will see you next time on the next Eat and Greet, and I will put Peter on the calendar when he's coming